Every tree has roots, every life has branches, and every adoption has a story. Some stories begin with questions, some begin with loss. All of them are rooted in love and the search for connection. This is Janet Munro, and this is Roots and Branches Adoption Stories, a podcast where real stories take root and grow. Because the more we share, the more we understand, and understanding helps us grow. Now, here's Janet Munro.
Hello, and welcome to Roots and Branches Adoption Stories. I'm Janet Munro. This is the show where we explore adoption from every angle: the adoptee, the birth parent, and the adoptive family. Roots and Branches began because my son was adopted in 1970. He had a wonderful upbringing with a wonderful family. He was truly loved and enjoyed that. And in 2017, I was able to connect with him. We had a great 6 years together, being part of each other's lives, getting to know each other, and learning. Well, Dwayne learned what it was that he had missed, and I learned what I'd missed. We had, as I said, 6 years together before he was killed in a workplace accident. And because of that, and because we always said that we had an Oprah story or a Hallmark movie, that this series of adoption stories has come about, where we tell stories because there's all kinds of adoption stories out there, and everyone needs to be told. We need people to understand how people felt back in the 60s, 70s when they gave birth to a child and it was taken from them. We need people to understand that adoption is not perfect, but you know what? Real family life is not perfect either. So today, I have to tell you that I had this amazing lady with us. Her name is Rhonda. She was adopted at 10 days old into a family where that she had an older brother who'd been adopted at 11 days old. She loved her adopted parents deeply, and she's recently lost her adoptive mom. So she is sad, but she's going to be happy today. We can say Rhonda describes her parents as fabulous, but not perfect. But who is? And isn't that just an honest way to describe family? So hello, Rhonda, and welcome. I am so excited about today. You know, when we had that first conversation together, we just kind of clicked and everything just fell into place. And we just enjoyed what we were talking about. So let's start off with, as I said, I don't think you'll remember what it was like when you were 10 days old, but you grew up as being adopted. And one of the things that I'd like to know is, when did you find out you were adopted, and how was that introduced to you through your family?
Well, hi, Janet. Thank you so much for having me here. I'm excited about this opportunity to chat with people about my adoption story. So one of the reasons my parents were fabulous is that there was no, what I like to call, shock day of being told I was adopted. In so many cases, we hear stories about, we'll tell them when they turn 18, or we just won't tell them, or we'll tell them when they're old enough to understand. My parents had the very sensible approach of, it was just the story we were always told. So I don't remember being told I was adopted. Neither does my brother. Neither of us remember being told. It was just part of our family's story all along.
So Dwayne's adopted mom said that she always said, "You're my favorite adopted son," or "You're my favorite adopted daughter," because she had a son and a daughter. Both of them were adopted. And that was her way of introducing it to them from a very young age.
We kind of got the chosen story, the word chosen, but it was kind of like, we picked you. And one of the funny things in our family lore is that I had what is known as a foot. So my foot was bent. So if these are my toes, my foot was like this. And the doctors had said, she'll need braces, which, spoiler alert, I didn't need braces. It popped out all on its own. But they had told my parents, do you still want her? And so the joke in our family was that they took the defective baby anyway. So, it's just part of those family stories that you all come to love and appreciate. And the story was, yeah, we chose you even though you were defective.
So when did you start with feelings of maybe abandonment or missing pieces from your life?
I think I always had a gap in my head. I would call it a black hole. I would call it all kinds of things. There's all kinds of things I would call it. But I always knew there was something missing. There was an element of things I wanted to know, but that I had no access to.
How did that affect you through your school years?
Even now talking about it makes me feel sad. Like I can feel this. You probably saw my face change because I can feel the sad of that. I can feel the sad of that little girl, of that teenager, of that young adult. I can feel the sad of that. It absolutely formed who I am. I am a recovering perfectionist. I struggle with acceptance and inclusion. I know a lot of people in the world, almost everyone has issues with belonging and a sense of, enough, good enough. We all struggle with various different things. I think for adoptees, we just have this additional layer of it. And it made me feel as though I was never as good as anybody else. I always had to do everything perfect or better than other people just in order to be as good as them, which I get the irony in that statement, but that just tells you how complex the brain works. I had to be better just to be as good. I was never good enough. Even though that is not the messaging that came from my parents, that isn't messaging that came from them. That's messaging from DNA, from inner conflict.
Did you have trouble making friends through school?
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's people that you meet in your life that say they've had the same friends since they were, 7 years old. That didn't happen for me. I have one girlfriend in adulthood who we've known each other since we were 12 or 13. And while we are very close now, we're very different, and that friendship has not always been easy. And I, throughout my life, would not have called her my best friend until I reached adulthood. And I have two best friends. She's one of two best friends. But as a youngster, I never felt like I had that bond with anyone.
When would you say you first realized that you felt different?
Always. I always felt different. I struggled with moments of depression and anxiety at a very low scale, at a minor scale throughout my life, but without knowing what it was, at a time when I don't think anyone would have been able to diagnose what it was, even if I had explained it to them. But I was very good at hiding it. So things like the post-holiday blues, post-Christmas depression. My parents were very giving. They were very generous. They wanted my brother and I to have things they didn't have, but we weren't spoiled. So it wasn't like the Christmas tree was overflowing, but we had a number of gifts and all things that we'd asked for, that we wanted. And Boxing Day would come, maybe the day after Boxing Day, and I would find myself increasingly sad and unhappy and berating myself. So I can remember being 10 years old, sitting in my closet in my room, berating myself for being ungrateful because I've gotten all these great things. I don't know a lot of 10-year-olds that have the ability to reflect like that or to put self-blame like that. So I think that's just an indication of the type of mindset I came out with.
So my son always said that he felt different, or told me that he felt different to his parents because his interests were so different.
Oh gosh, yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of that in our family. But there's a lot of similarity. Like prior to hitting record, you brought up the point of nature nurture, which I know we'll get to later. But there are so many similarities between my parents and I. So many mannerisms, beliefs, approaches. But the fact that I'm a writer, that doesn't run in my family. You know, my mom loved to read, loved it, but she couldn't write. So that was a gift I was born with that my family wanted to nurture, but also knew it was different from them. Um, I think in terms of feeling like, did I fit or didn't I fit? Um, I always felt different from everyone. It wasn't just different from my family because I understood the concept of adoption. I understood why I felt different in my family. And that made it not so weird, right? Like that made it not so bad. I feel different because I'm adopted and that's okay. So it was okay. But feeling different in day-to-day life and going to school and trying to make friends, that's where it was really challenging.
Did you ever kind of fight back because you were adopted? Like, did you ever decide to run away from home because that wasn't your home?
Yeah. I mean, that's you know a childhood threat, right? Like it's you're mad because you got cut off from ice cream, whatever it is, right? You didn't get the cereal you wanted at the grocery store, so you throw a hissy fit. A lot of my outbursts were because my brother got things I didn't get because guess what? He was older. But Rhonda thought that she should get the same things as her brother got. He was 4 years older than me. But I felt like I should get the same things. He got all these things that I didn't get. And so that would lead to an outburst. It led to my parents being so fair in everything they did with the two of us. And I feel bad for that now. I understand where it comes from now, was that I was trying to make a point about fitting in and what did I matter. There were a couple of times when I yanked out a bag or a suitcase and loaded my teddy bear and my clothes in it and threatened to run away. Yeah, sure. But, you know, that was that because I was adopted? I don't know. Was it just because I was a difficult kid?
Yeah. My sister and I packed a suitcase with it and took our teddy bears and we left home and went to the bus stop. And that was as far as we got.
As you do. I don't even think I made it to the end of the driveway before my dad was like, "Hey, honey, like let's sit down and talk about this." So, you know, I think there may have been one or two occasions when I was so angry and so intent on hurt that I may have said something like, "You're not my real parents anyways." And again, things I regret deeply now. When you're a kid, you just have an intent to hurt. You're not thinking about how that really, really hurts.
I know, but there's sometimes I think when even kids today that are with their biological parents, sometimes they'll say, "I wish I was adopted,"
Oh,
you know, because they don't want to be
yeah.
with So
Yeah.
it goes
They
both
just
ways,
want
right?
something different. They want something different. I don't
Yeah.
like this situation. I don't like that you're the boss of me, because guess what? You're the parent. So, of course, you're the boss of me. Um, and so I'm going to have a reaction. And we have friends. They've got a 5-year-old little girl. They come over and visit quite regularly. And she's had some pretty major outbursts while they've been here. And it kind of makes me laugh, because I'm like, um, I know you're their kid. There's no two ways about it. So you can say, you're not the boss of me. You don't get to boss me around. But yeah, they do. They're your parents.
So you loved your adoptive parents,
Very
but then
much.
you still wanted to find your biological parents. What
Desperately.
age were you when you decided you wanted to start looking? What age did it hit you that you needed to know?
I probably would have started as a toddler if I had had the skills or the tools to do so. I didn't really start doing anything about it until I hit my late teens. I'd say it was, upon graduating from high school, going to university, um, kind of that 19 to 21 ish range is when I really started getting into it.
And where did that take you?
So I looked at different ways of figuring it out, because it's not a common thing, as you know, and certainly someone who was adopted in the same generation as your son was, how little it was spoken about in terms of government information or um, things online. These types of things, like, we didn't have that. We didn't have tools. You couldn't just go and look it up online and say, hey, I'm adopted. What do I do? Um, so I floundered about a bit, and somehow I came upon a group back then that was called Missing Pieces. And I started attending meetings, and they were, once or twice a month. And we would talk about our own adoption story, where we were at and what that meant. They all knew I wanted to have more information. They were able to set me on a path of, here are some options of how you can look. We talked a lot about the baby listings in the paper. So in this group, there were birth moms, there were adopted kids like me, and then there were adoptive families. And so we would all talk about these various tools that you could go and look at. And at one meeting, a woman attended, and she asked me a few questions and told me she thought she knew who my birth mother was. When we confirmed that the person that she had in mind was actually my birth mom, I had given her my birth weight. I was 6 pounds and 9 ounces, and she said, "Congratulations, you were born at 3:34 a.m." And that was amazing. It was amazing to know that, because it's something that kids who aren't adopted generally know, and it's not a big deal, and they don't give a crap about, because why would you? But having not known for 20 odd years, knowing was amazing. The downside to this was that she felt she had a duty to not tell me who my birth mom was. She would not give me any information. What she gave me was a last name, and I coupled this with what we have here. I mean, I'm in Canada, so here in British Columbia, we have something called non-identifying information, or at least we did when I was in my 20s. And combining those two pieces of information allowed me to have some knowledge. I went to the local public library and spent 12-hour days in front of a microfiche screen trying to find my birth family through obituary listings. And it didn't result in anything other than very tired eyes. It resulted in very tired eyes. So fast forward a couple of years, I still wanted to know, but I was at university. I was doing well in my studies. I got it in my head that what I wanted was for my birth family to know that I was graduating from post-secondary. I was the first one in my immediate family to be graduating. Granted, there was only four of us, but my brother hadn't graduated from post-secondary. So I was the first one to be doing that. I was kind of excited about that. Um, I'd written a story, like an op-ed to the Vancouver Sun, hoping that maybe I would find them that way. Um, didn't result in anything other than that was the first piece of paid writing I'd ever done in my life. So there was that.
And you had it published, yes.
Yeah, right. Um, so while I was at university, I learned about active registries and passive registries. Passive simply means if you're on the list, they're on the list, the government will connect the two of you. Active means you can register and they will seek out the other party and connect the two of you. So because I was in school, they waived the fee and put me on the active registry. So that's really where the rubber met the road.
And how long did it take you to go from the active registry to actually finding what you were looking for?
It was Christmas of 1992, and I got a phone call. So it was like December 27th. I got a phone call from the ministry and they said, "We found your parents. We've spoken to them. They are not comfortable at this time, but we just give us a little bit of time to talk to them. By the way, they've married each other. They're married to each other, and they still are." I think I was in shock because the concept of having siblings didn't even cross my mind. And then after I hung up the phone and agreed to wait, I realized these wouldn't be half siblings. These would be full siblings. And it was shocking, right? That was shocking. So I waited a few days. They called me back. They said they're willing to communicate by letter. They're not ready for anything else yet. I said, okay, that's cool. That's fine. I learned that they didn't have any other children. I'm the only child they had. And so we started a letter writing process. I sent them a letter with photos, told them everything about me that I could think to tell. I mean, I'm in my early 20s. It's not like I was particularly mature about my thoughts or where I was at. I'm sure I was very arrogant and very self-absorbed because I was a young adult. They sent me a letter back filled with pictures. We did this for a while. I then invited them to my graduation from university, and my birth mom attended with my aunt. So I actually have a picture somewhere in this house of me, my mom, and my birth mom.
That must have been quite the day.
It's pretty interesting. My mom needed to be talked down off the wall a few times. My phrase to her was, "Mom, I'm 23 years old. It's a little late for me to run away and join the circus." And from that, she kind of got it. She calmed down. My dad was ridiculously supportive throughout the whole thing. He did not feel threatened in any way. Now, that said, I am a daddy's girl. So, of course, he didn't feel threatened. My mom's and my relationship has been tumultuous, mothers and daughters, right? But I think that's just proof of the fact that she is my mom. No one else is my mom. Of course it was tumultuous. It was tumultuous like every other mother and daughter, whether they're adopted or not. So I think she finally got the message and got over it. But I also know that when the gap came, which we'll get to, when the gap came, she was relieved.
What happened between yourself and your birth parents?
So birth mom came out with my birth aunt. They came out for graduation. We continued to write letters because, of course, back in those days, there wasn't Facebook or anything like that. So we wrote letters. We'd call periodically. We'd pick up the phone. I went to visit them a couple of times. They live about 3 hours away from where I live. So I went for a weekend. I stayed with them for a weekend. It was good. It was also uncomfortable at times. Um, my birth dad would be distant upon my arrival, and then by the next day, he would be all over me. Like the relationship was full on. Like he was there, he was asking questions, he was answering questions. And then when the time came that it was time for me to leave, then he would get distant again. So we would go from being completely distant and absent, like not even in the room when I arrived, to being touchy, not in a creepy way, just he needed to touch me, to again distant. And I recognized that he just simply couldn't cope with this coming and going, this repeated loss. He couldn't cope with it.
What did you find out from them about what happened during your birth?
When they had me, she was 16, he was 15. They were children, babies. They both came from extremely large families, like very, very large families. My maternal grandfather, with his first wife, with my birth mom, she was one of, I believe, 11 children. Her mother died, my maternal grandmother died, and my birth grandfather remarried and proceeded to have another 10 plus children. So there were over 20 children on one side. My birth father's side was much the same, that there were more than 10 children. So them being so incredibly young with a baby, it I think everyone would have recognized that it wouldn't have been a good scenario for them to keep me. Yeah, they could have had supportive older siblings, but I would have been living here, living there, living here, living there. And my birth grandfather basically had said, like, that you keeping her is not an option. This is not an option. So I'm grateful for that. What I'm sad for is that after birth mom gave birth, she was told, they both were told, go home, get on with your lives, and forget about her because you will never see her again. So to tell someone who is a teenager something so foundationally final, so dramatic, it's no wonder that they couldn't get past it, and they couldn't.
But they still married each other.
They did. They did.
Still loved each other.
And didn't have any other kids. And when I asked about that, I asked them about why they didn't have any other kids. And she looked at me and she said, we just thought it would happen naturally. And I sat there and I thought, what the heck does that mean? Didn't I happen naturally? You know, like I didn't get what it meant. And to this day, I still don't know what she meant. And at that time, so I mean, this is 30 plus years ago, at that time she had said, well, I guess we still could. And I sat there and thought, oh, the hell no. I'm 23 years old. Do you think you're going to have, I don't want a full-blown sibling at 23 years old. Again, being very self-absorbed and making it about me.
I can imagine, because I know when I gave birth to Dwayne, I was blessed in that I had the opportunity to hold him for a few minutes before they realized that he was being adopted. And I got to hold him, this beautiful 7-pound baby boy with bright red hair, because at that point I was a redhead as well. He looked just like me. And when I first spoke to him and the memories came back, I didn't realize that he'd grown. You know, he was still a baby.
Yeah.
And then I find out he has 3 grandchildren, and he has 3 children and 5 grandchildren, meaning I have the grandchildren and great grandchildren. Totally unexpected. He was on wife number 4.
But you don't
And
expect these things because things freeze in time, right?
right.
And you and I spoke the first time we chatted about how my birth mom is very emotionally immature. And I couldn't quite put my finger on it at first. And then as time passed and I interacted with her more, I realized that for her, how she froze in time. So you took Dwayne and you kind of froze him as a baby and maybe extended him into some sort of young adult, but certainly not as an adult with grandchildren. My birth mom emotionally froze as a 16-year-old. And so her emotional capabilities never advanced past that.
One of the things I really want adoptees to do when they find their birth parents or vice versa is just listen to the story behind it, because you never know what happened back then, the reason for it,
It's
and we
hard.
can't change what happened,
No.
but listen to how it affected the other
It's
party.
hard. It's hard. I know that I went through so much of my life feeling shame for even existing. And that's a really frickin' heavy weight for a child to carry. So no matter how much my parents told me they loved me, it could not override this sense of shame for existing, that somehow I was responsible for my own existence and I had ruined their lives. I also have a sense in me, and whether this is true or not, we can debate, but in the course of doing some alternative therapy, I got the message that she at one point had tried to throw herself down the stairs to force a miscarriage. And I just thought, like, how horrible am I that I led another human being to thinking that that was the thing to do. I took it all on. It was all my fault.
How, from talking to you, I know that you haven't seen your birth parents in quite a few years,
I haven't.
and that was your choice. I think you said that that was their choice
Yeah.
because you felt that every time you left, they felt like they were giving you away again.
That was my sense. That was the sense I had picked up. I don't know why I didn't expect this conversation today to be so hard. I guess because I'm really feeling it. I'm allowing myself to feel these emotions today. So thank you to you and to the listeners and the viewers for actually, giving me the space to feel this again. So after my graduation, we continued to communicate. I continued to visit with them. I met my now ex-husband, but I met my ex-husband and we decided to get married. I invited my birth parents to our wedding. I understand now as a more mature person why that was way too much. It was way too much to ask them. But instead of saying that it was just too much, their response was, "We don't feel we know you well enough to share in that moment." And I remember getting that response and just going, "What the heck?" And of course, those are the exact words because they're burned into my head. I didn't know what to make of it. Didn't hear from them. Didn't hear from them. Didn't hear from them. Didn't hear from them. Got our professional wedding photos back. Sent them wedding photos. No reply. They just from. I guess that when we got married, my ex and I got married in '98, so that would have been '99. From '99 on, I have not heard from them. I have not had a reply. So that is now 26 years. I've not heard from them.
But you still connect with them by letter like you did originally.
I feel that they have a right to know what's happening with me. Whether they reciprocate or not is not the issue. The issue is I feel that they have a right to know where I'm at. And so every 3 to 5 years, I send them a letter. I send them a letter and tell them what's happening. I let them know where I'm living. I give them my address, my phone number, make sure that they have methods to contact me. I tell them that I care about them. I tell them that if they need anything from me, I hope they will call me. And I send that letter to the address that I knew they lived at when I would go and visit them. Those letters are never returned, so I assume they're getting them. And that has to be good enough. It has to be okay. So this year, I'm due to write another letter. The last letter I wrote them was 3 years ago. They got a letter when my dad passed away, and I let them know my dad had passed. And then 5 years later, I wrote the letter 3 years ago. And so I'm due a letter this year, and I have to tell them my mom's gone. And I don't know what that emotion brings up in them. I don't know if they even read them. I don't know.
But they don't return them.
They don't get returned, so I assume they're getting
That's
them.
a plus.
Right? But they could be sitting there in a drawer unopened. I don't know.
They could.
I have no clue. They could sit there and read them and cry and think, gosh, I wish she'd stop sending letters, or gosh, I wish she'd send more letters, or why can't we get over this? Or maybe they don't talk about it at all. I could speculate out the wazoo. I don't have a clue. And again, I have to be okay with that. I have to be okay with what I perceive to be right for me, which is keeping them aware of where I'm at and just remove myself from the outcome and just let it be okay. Because otherwise I'll go crazy.
Yeah, you just have to accept it.
Yeah. What
So
else you gonna do?
You can't change it. So you got married?
Yeah.
Did you have children of your own?
No. So my ex and I got married in 98. I knew within a year that it wasn't going to work, which is hilarious because we'd been together for 5 years before we got married. So we stuck it out for a while. By year 5 of the marriage, it was good and over. I remarried in 2007 to someone I had actually met before I met my ex-husband. And we've been together just super duper happy. We did try to have a family. We were unable, which was something my dad would joke about. So my brother and his wife, they were also unable to have kids.
Oh.
So I joke about that, and I say, isn't it funny that 2 kids who were raised by 2 people who couldn't have kids, these 2 kids now can't have kids. And to me, that is the story of what makes family. It's not necessarily about procreating. It's about what we choose and what we form. And so my brother and sister-in-law looked into the adoption option, and things didn't work out for them. So they don't have kids either. And my dad chimed in at one point, and he said, who better than an adopted kid to raise an adopted kid right? That's the kind of person my dad was. So he got it, like my dad got it. And he would often say there is nothing like having children to cause shades of gray in your life. He was a very black and white guy when he was young, like me, as a young adult. He was very black and white, and he said, yeah, there's nothing like having kids to make the world shades of gray. And he was just very very open, very thoughtful, and he knew that adoption could be an option for both of his kids, but it just never came to be. So my brother and I, we're the end of my dad's line, unfortunately.
And are your brother and you good friends?
Are
you close?
We are very different people. We're exceptionally different. Again, nature, nurture, right? I wouldn't call us close. I adore my sister-in-law. She's amazing. She's a spectacular woman. And I think that as a group of four people, we get along really well. And since my mom has passed, my brother and I have been forced to do more things together because of the estate and, the business of death, right? We've been forced to do more things together. And I think that it's benefited our relationship. I said years ago that when mom was gone, I didn't know if I'd still want to have Christmas with my brother. But this past year was our first Christmas without my mom, and it was kind of nice, It was good.
We'll
see what the future brings. Yeah, it was great. My mom was very specific about who she wanted around her. She didn't, all she wanted was family. She just wanted family. So if there were people in our lives that we would have liked to have invited to Christmas, my mom couldn't tolerate that. And now we're able to invite friends. And so this past Christmas, my brother and his wife had a friend come and join us. We had a friend come and join us. So there were 6 of us, and it was great. It was just it was a nice evening.
No stress.
None. Maybe the turkey was a bit overdone, but no family stress, no family drama. But at that time, because my mom just passed away on December 9th, so it was pretty freaking fresh on Christmas Day. So there was a lot of reflection. There was a lot of joking. We brought up my dad a lot because, losing mom meant losing daddy kind of again. So there was a lot of talk about that. A lot of talk about my sister-in-law's experience because she lost both of her parents. Both died within a year of each other, so exceptionally hard for her. So it's just a lot of reflection, a lot of insight, a lot of togetherness.
Did your brother ever find his biological parents?
No. My brother is not interested.
Okay.
When I got my non-identifying information, which is like a redacted pack of papers. Again, I don't know how they send it now. This is how they did it in the 90s. I got this redacted set of papers. I said to my brother, "You have one of these too." And he just looked at me and whatever. My sister-in-law very much would like to know. When they were trying to have a family, I think they both would have benefited from some information. But I think they also saw my situation and went, okay, well, Rhonda went down this road and she and her husband aren't able to have kids either, and it's not benefiting her to know who they are.
Right.
So, yeah, there's a lot of questions there. I think my brother had a lot of loyalty hang-ups. So will something shake loose in him now that my mom has passed? I don't know. He's 60. Is this something that he needs to be fulfilled? I don't know. I really don't know. We don't talk about it. He knows my experience. He knows it's something I needed to feel fulfilled. And I will say that back when that happened, back when I found them, back when that phone call happened, back in December of 1992, I remember friends looking at me and saying, "You look different. Like, what has happened with you that you look different?" Something shook loose in me. Something happened that I was able to let go of something.
Like, I know when I first spoke to my son, it was like this tsunami of feelings, of memories, just going back and remembering at that time everything that happened prior to the birth, everything that happened after the birth. And everything just comes rushing back because you've repressed it for so long.
Yeah.
Now, I'm sure your birth parents went through something very similar to what I did. They might not have come out the same way as I did, but they would have had all those feelings brought back to life because they'd been told to forget about everything, right? And all of a sudden, there you are.
The shame is so deep. So that shame that I talked about feeling as a child, I am pretty sure that comes very naturally through the DNA from the two of them, from her carrying me in her body and feeling shame about her situation. So, you get a phone call out of the blue and they say, "Hey, your birth daughter's looking for you." I can only imagine what that triggered in both of them. I I'm angry with the way that people used to deal with adoption. I'm angry that it made it so that my birth parents don't feel, let's use the word safe. My birth parents don't feel safe enough to have a relationship with me, even though they know that door is open. And I blame culture, society, government. I blame a lot of things for that because there were so many different ways to do it. And yet it was normal. That was the way things were done then. And Janet, you're not in British Columbia, Canada, but your experience was the same. You were treated the same. And my husband's dad was also adopted, and he's a generation older than me, but his situation, it was horrific what happened and what was told, what was said. I'd like to think that people have their heads screwed on a little straighter now around adoption. I don't know.
I don't know either. I really don't know. So when you met your birth parents, did you discover, apart from the feeling of shame that you discovered that you think is from them, were there any other feelings or anything else that you felt was theirs?
There were a lot of feelings. Yeah, a lot of things were theirs. I desperately was looking for a connection, something similar, because like I don't look like either one of them, right? Like there's no way you look at me in a photo with my family, and I don't think I look like any of them, but you can tell we're family. If you were to look at me in a photo with my birth parents, you would just think they're strangers that I ran into. There is no similarity, nothing. The one thing I found was, because it was summer when I met them, my toes. My toes are the same as my birth mom's. That is, I latched onto that with everything I had because it's all there was. I learned that going through photo albums with the two of them, the one person in the family I do look like is the aunt who committed suicide. So that was like, oh, okay. This also explains some of the mental health challenges that I've had throughout my life, that it comes not only from being adopted, not only from situational, but also it is genetic. I have a genetic predisposition to mental health issues. I experienced a high level of anxiety around them because it was such an uncertain situation. We found that my birth mom, she has hypoglycemia. I border on being hypoglycemic. I've never had the test done. She's had the test done. That was something we were able to talk about. And I just went, okay, I don't need to get the test done now because I have all the markers. You've done the test. This makes sense. So some answers were there. Some emotions prevented some of the questions from being asked. I felt like I was invading. I felt like I'd have more time with them to ask questions and get answers. Do I feel fulfilled with what I got? Yeah, I do. I mean, obviously I don't regret in any way finding them. I am better for it. I am so much better for knowing them. yet I still have a part of me that wishes it could have been different. Wishes they could have handled it. Wishes that the emotional things weren't what they were. And we talked about shame a little, maybe not using that exact word, but we talked about shame. We talked about how they approached life after having me. But they didn't talk about their relationship being this massive love affair. I think they came together because they were kids that had a baby and neither of them could move past it, and they just stayed together.
So I'm going to read you a poem that Shirley, who was Dwayne's adopted mom, sent me as soon as she heard about me and knew where I was. It's the legacy of an adopted child. Once there were two women who never knew each other. One you do not remember, the other you call mother. Two different lives shaped to make your one. One became your guiding star, the other became your sun. The first one gave you life, and the second taught you to live it. The first gave you a need for love, the second was there to give it. One gave you a nationality, the other gave you a name. One gave you a talent, the other gave you an aim. One gave you emotions, the other calmed your fears. One saw your first sweet smile, the other prayed for a child, and her hopes were not denied. And now you ask me, through your tears, the age-old question, unanswered through the years. Heredity or environment? Which are you a product of? Neither, my darling, neither. Just two different kinds of love.
That's a beautiful poem.
Isn't it? I thought she found it in a dollar store.
Wow.
I picked it up because it just fit everything that we had talked about and what the kind of relationship we had.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I just feel that it is two different kinds of love. And one lady I talked to, she had a foster child, and the dad wouldn't give up his rights for the foster child so that she could adopt her. And then after having a day out with them all, because they say it takes a village to raise a child, right?
Yeah.
So they had this whole day together, and then he said, the most loving thing I could do for my daughter is to let you adopt her. And that brought that poem to home as well.
That's so true. It's so true. And this is, I guess, part of why I say what I say about feeling angry about the way birth moms were spoken to in the past, because they are doing a loving thing. And my birth parents did the best possible thing they could for me. Have I had challenges throughout my life? Has my life been perfect? No. Have I had to face internal storms because of being adopted? Yes. But the end result is so much better because they sacrificed. They sacrificed something. They gave my parents a gift, and they gave me a gift.
I really don't know how to answer that. It is a gift. At the time, we definitely don't look at it that way. But it really is a gift. So you wrote a children's book on bullying.
I did, yes. Yeah, I've sent it to a couple of publishers. It's been refused, and I haven't picked up that torch again in a while. So I do need to start submitting it again. It's about a young child that is bullied about what he's wearing, and it is a message that runs through all of my creative writing. And not bullying specifically, but being on the outside looking in, being abandoned, being left, being not chosen, being not included. That message runs through my creative writing, whether I intend it or not.
And you did say that you were planning to write an autobiography of an adopted child or an adopted person.
I think that adopted people in the adoption circle do run through some of my writing. Some of it's for shock effect. Some of it is just because that's the story. I have written I've written a memoir that needs to be revised, and it does touch on being adopted. It's not about being adopted, but it does touch on the fact that I am adopted. And yeah, definitely there is some other creative writing in the works that has the adoption triangle in it. It's lived experience, right? And I have found throughout my life, as I'm sure you have too, I have found that people are absolutely fascinated by adoption and reunion when they, well, maybe even those who are exposed to it. But when people aren't exposed to it and don't understand it, they're so curious. Like I remember my aunt asking me, not that long ago, maybe, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago, my aunt asked me, what's it like being adopted? And I looked at her and I said, I don't know. What's it like not being adopted? Right? Like I have no clue. But I found that back in 92, when those letters were coming from my birth parents, where I was working, the people I was working with were so curious. Like they wanted to see those pictures. They wanted to read those letters. Like for them, I guess it was like fiction, right? It was fiction. And the most interesting aspect of that is that one of the ladies I worked with was going through the process of adopting a child right in that moment. And I understood her curiosity and fascination, but everybody was. I guess it's what you don't know, right? Like I say, it's fiction.
So would you say writing is how you heal?
No, I don't think so. I don't think like the people that talk about journaling being good for them and expressing themselves. I hate journaling. I hate it. I won't do it. Nope. So there's no cathartism there for me. I would say that when I sit down to do creative writing and I allow myself to detach from the moment I'm in, that my subconscious will barf things out on a page that can be healing. But quite often, I don't know it's there until maybe I reread it the second time or the third time. I think I mentioned to you before, back when I was reading a lot of sci-fi, there was a sci-fi book that I had outlined and started to draft. And I did not realize until I was rereading the work, and probably for the third or fourth time, my main character was of two different races and trying to find her place. And she was looking for a home. She was looking for a house to buy. And I didn't see it. I had no idea I had put it in there. Just thought it was a good idea.
Well, thank you so much for being here today, Rhonda. I have really enjoyed this. I think we just hit it off great. And I love your input and the way you feel and the way you're able to tell your story, because you are the lady with the pen, right? Or a girl with the pen.
Thank you so much.
Reunion is not a fairy tale ending. Sometimes it is a mirror. Sometimes it is another goodbye. And sometimes peace doesn't come from being chosen, but from choosing yourself. If you're not an adoptee struggling after reunion, if you're a birth parent carrying silent shame, you're not alone. This is Roots and Branches, where every story matters. I'm Janet Munro on K-Fred Radio, and thank you for being with us today.
Thank you for tuning in to Roots and Branches Adoption Stories, where every tree has roots, every life has branches, and every adoption has a story. Got an adoption story you want to tell? Want to learn more about adoption stories? Then visit rootsandbranchesadoptionstories.com.